Northern Europe, Scandinavia. These are the Vikings, but not yet the warriors history remembers. They are farmers, fishermen, blacksmiths, families living inside smoky wooden longhouses, surviving on thin soil and short growing seasons. Winters were long and unforgiving. One failed harvest meant hunger. Repeated failure meant death. But Scandinavia was not isolated. Norse traders had already sailed across the Baltic and heard stories of wealthy monasteries in England and prosperous towns along the Frankish coast, rich, divided, and poorly defended. At the same time, shipbuilders perfected the longship. Fast, flexible, able to cross open seas and move up shallow rivers. Pressure at home, opportunity abroad, technology to reach it. The sea was no longer a barrier. It was the only direction left to go. In the year 793, the sea carried something different. Longships cut through cold waves toward the coast of Northumbria. Sleek, fast, and built for shock. Their shallow drafts allowed them to land directly onto the shore without harbors. There were no warning systems waiting for them, and no coastal defenses prepared for what was coming. Their target was the monastery of Lindisfarne. It was not chosen at random. Monasteries across the British Isles were wealthy. They stored gold chalices, silver crosses, illuminated manuscripts, and donations gathered from surrounding lands. They were symbols of spiritual authority but militarily defenseless. Monks were not soldiers. Their isolation, once a strength for prayer and contemplation, now made them vulnerable. When the ships appeared on the horizon, there was confusion, not alarm. Foreign traders were not uncommon, but these were not merchants. The raiders moved quickly. Speed was their greatest weapon. They stormed the monastery, seized valuables, captured prisoners who could be sold as slaves, and left before regional forces could respond. The entire operation was designed for precision and withdrawal, not occupation. News of the attack spread rapidly across Christian Europe. Chroniclers described it as divine punishment. Letters recorded shock and horror at the violence inflicted on a holy site. To them, it felt apocalyptic, pagans from the far north desecrating sacred ground. But for the Norse, this was not random chaos. It was strategy. The raid proved something critical. Wealthy coastal targets could be reached, struck, and abandoned with minimal resistance. The sea was not just a path of exploration. It was a highway of opportunity. More ships followed in the years after 793. Ireland, Scotland, and the Frankish coast were struck. Raids became seasonal. Spring departures and summer strikes followed by autumn returns. Silver flowed back to Scandinavia. Successful leaders gained status. Wealth attracted followers. Followers created larger expeditions. What began as survival pressure at home had turned into calculated expansion abroad. Europe realized this was not a single attack. It was the beginning of an age. After Lindisfarne, the pattern did not stop. It intensified. Throughout the early 9th century, Viking ships appeared again and again along the coasts of the British Isles and the Frankish Empire. Ireland's monasteries were struck repeatedly, sometimes rebuilt, and struck again. Coastal towns along the Seine and Loire rivers were attacked with increasing confidence. Even powerful rulers struggled to defend every shoreline and river mouth. The Vikings understood something essential. Rivers were open roads into the heart of Europe. Their longships were not only built for the sea. They could sail deep inland through shallow waters where larger ships could not follow. Paris itself was attacked more than once. Frankish rulers sometimes chose to pay tribute rather than risk destruction. This payment would later be known as Danegeld. It was silver given in exchange for temporary peace. But tribute confirmed something dangerous. The Vikings had leverage. At first, most expeditions were seasonal. Warriors sailed in spring and returned before winter. Yet by the mid-9th century, something changed. Some groups no longer went home. They built winter camps in England and Ireland. They fortified positions and gathered intelligence. This was no longer simple raiding. It was preparation. In the year 865, that preparation became undeniable. A massive force landed in England. It became known as the Great Heathen Army. This was not a quick strike, but a coordinated invasion. Multiple leaders commanded thousands of warriors. Horses were taken locally to allow faster inland movement. The Anglo-Saxon kingdoms were politically divided. The Vikings moved against them one by one. Northumbria fell first. York was captured in 866. Mercia was pressured and weakened. Only Wessex under Alfred would eventually resist successfully. The transformation was complete. The Vikings were no longer seasonal raiders. They were an army, and England would never be the same. Conquest did not end with burning towns. It began with staying. After years of campaigning, large parts of eastern and northern England came under Norse control. This region would later be known as the Danelaw. In these lands, Viking leaders did not simply plunder. They governed. York, renamed Jorvik, became one of the most important Viking cities outside Scandinavia. It grew into a center of trade, craft, and political power. Streets filled with blacksmiths, traders, and shipbuilders. Markets connected England to Scandinavia and beyond. Silver, furs, weapons, and slaves moved through its networks. This was no temporary occupation. Land was divided and redistributed. Farms were rebuilt under Norse rule. Laws were enforced according to Scandinavian custom. Assemblies were held to settle disputes and maintain order. The Vikings did not erase local society completely. They blended into it. Intermarriage occurred between Norse settlers and Anglo-Saxons. Languages mixed and influenced each other. Many Old Norse words entered everyday English. Even modern English still carries traces of this contact. Meanwhile, expansion continued elsewhere. Norse settlers established strongholds in Ireland. Dublin grew into a powerful Viking trading hub. It connected the Irish Sea to wider European markets. To the west, families sailed to Iceland in the late 9th century. They established a society built around law assemblies known as things. This was migration, not raiding. Entire households crossed the ocean seeking land. The Viking world was no longer limited to Scandinavia. It stretched across the North Atlantic and deep into England. They were not just warriors anymore. They were rulers, settlers, and builders of new societies. The age of simple raids had ended. A Norse political presence had taken root in Europe. Expansion did not stop in England. The horizon kept moving west. From Norway and the British Isles, Norse sailors pushed deeper into the North Atlantic. Their ships were strong enough to survive open ocean voyages. In the late 9th century, Iceland became a major destination. Settlers claimed land, built farms, and created an independent society. There was no king ruling Iceland. Power was balanced through assemblies known as the Althing. Law replaced constant warfare. Disputes were settled through legal judgment rather than endless bloodshed. But even Iceland had limits. Land was claimed quickly and competition followed. One man, Eric the Red, was exiled from Iceland after violent disputes. Exile forced him further west. Around 985, he reached Greenland. He named it strategically to attract settlers. Despite its harsh climate, Norse families migrated there. They built farms along the southwestern coast. Greenland became another extension of the Norse world. Walrus ivory and trade goods linked it back to Europe. Yet the sea still stretched beyond Greenland. Sailors spoke of lands even further west. Around the year 1000, Leif Erikson led an expedition beyond Greenland. He reached a place later called Vinland. Archaeological evidence confirms a Norse presence in North America. This occurred nearly 5 centuries before Columbus. The settlement did not last long. Distance, limited numbers, and conflict with indigenous peoples made survival difficult. Still, the achievement was extraordinary. The Vikings had crossed the Atlantic. They were no longer confined to Europe. Their ships had reached a new continent. From isolated farmers in Scandinavia, they had become explorers of the unknown. Few societies of that era matched their maritime reach, but expansion had consequences. Distance weakened central control. Christianity was spreading across Scandinavia. New political structures were forming at home. The age of endless outward movement was slowing. Change was coming again.
Dark, but we carry the light of our forebears. We must not falter.
The Viking world did not collapse in a single battle. It changed from within. By the early 11th century, Scandinavia itself was transforming. Kings in Norway and Denmark were consolidating power. Christianity was spreading steadily across the north. Old Norse pagan traditions were being replaced by churches and bishops. Raiding was becoming less profitable. European kingdoms were stronger and better organized. Coastal defenses improved. Standing armies were more prepared. In England, Viking rule had already peaked under King Cnut. He ruled a North Sea empire linking England, Denmark, and Norway. But after his death, unity fractured. Power struggles weakened Norse dominance. Meanwhile, England rebuilt under native kings. Political structures were more centralized than before. The final turning point came in 1066. Harald Hardrada of Norway launched one last major invasion of England. He believed he had a rightful claim to the English throne. His army landed and won an early victory. But at the Battle of Stamford Bridge, English forces led by King Harold defeated him. Harald Hardrada was killed in battle. This moment is widely considered the end of the Viking Age. Large-scale Scandinavian invasions of England stopped. Ironically, later that same year, England fell again, but this time to the Normans, descendants of earlier Vikings who had settled in France. The warriors of the north did not disappear overnight. They became kings, nobles, merchants, and Christians. Their identity shifted. Their era of sudden coastal terror ended. From farmers struggling in harsh Scandinavian landscapes, to raiders feared across Europe, to settlers, rulers, and explorers of distant lands, the Vikings reshaped medieval history. They did not vanish, they transformed.